Welcome back to the Craic, baby. It's Friday. A lot of things are happening today. I mean, it's a busy weekend, especially from a European perspective. I mean, we've got Mick Conlan's fight in Belfast tonight. We have PFL Madrid going down right now. I mean, I'm hearing there's a lot of VIPs head to that arena in Madrid. I'm talking Kylian Mbappe back up in there. A lot of Real Madrid boys showing up to support Kostelo Van Steenis as he looks to once again defeat Fabian Edwards razor close the first time they met six years ago, I believe, 6 or 7 years ago. And a meeting again. Two boys, massive resurgence. Kostelo Van Steenis, the middleweight champion, having had his resurgent victory against Johnny Eblen. And then you have Fabian Edwards, the tournament champion at middleweight, came in at the 11th hour. We thought he was out of the tournament last year, got his visa sorted, won the whole damn thing. It's a very, very, very nice event. And of course, UFC London is tomorrow. It is a big card for the UK. It's not really getting drummed up the way it usually would, I feel. Maybe that's because I'm not there this week in London. And of course, this will be the first London event without our great colleague and the brilliant Abby Subban. And my heart goes out to all of the media people that are in London this weekend, because he was a massive part of that week every year, bringing everybody together. So rest in peace, Abby. I'm sure everybody, and I saw Farah Hanoun putting up a picture of him doing an interview with Dan Hardy back in the day. A great lad. I'm sure it's a big, big absence this week in London. Unfortunately, we had another death in the martial arts family today, I believe it was. I woke up to these messages from Shaheen Al-Shadi, and we'll be hearing from another member of the team in moments because he had to write about it right up until this episode of The Craic started. Mr. Chuck Norris, the great karate black belt movie star, Mr. Walker, Texas Ranger, you might know him as. That is certainly my reference to Chuck Norris over the years. And of course, the boogeyman checking under his bed for Chuck Norris before he goes to sleep. Superman wearing Chuck Norris pajamas, all that stuff. Chuck, unfortunately, is on his annual hat retrieval mission. This happens once a year. It's kind of like his religion. You know, he goes off and he seeks out new hats. And it's a very serious thing that can see him, you know, travel all around the US. Sometimes he might even leave the country if it's a particular kind of hat that he's after. So he will not be able to join us today. And I fully respect his hat quest. I mean, I'm not here judging at all. But we do have big time Ben Fowlkes. We did get him in right before the recording started. But we do have him to talk about the wonderful Chuck Norris. Ben, a big loss for martial arts today.
Yeah, we should make clear when you were talking about Chuck on the hat vision quest.
Oh yeah, no, he's
just
alive.
Now. That's Chuck Mindenhall,
Yeah.
still alive and well. Don't
you.
get worried, everybody. Chuck Mindenhall, at least as far as we know. I haven't heard from him today, so I hope he's fine.
Thank you for that clarification. We should have had that. Thank you, Ben.
You don't. It's not often you get your Chucks confused, but this is one of those days where it could happen. You know, yeah. I wrote something about it just because it is. It's such a specific cultural moment. The Chuck Norris moment. Like I heard, you know, today from people who, especially like people who work with much younger people who are just like, they've heard the name. They got like push notifications, like a New York Times sent out a push notification being like, Chuck Norris is dead. Wow. And if you didn't know if you didn't grow up, especially in America at a certain time, you might not have any real concept of who that is other than, you know, you've heard the name. Maybe you've heard the jokes, but you don't really know what that means. And you don't know why him, you know, maybe you've seen him, maybe you recognize him as Walker, Texas Ranger. It really was like, I was born in 1979. So I grew up mainly in, you know, browning into consciousness during the late 80s, early 90s. And for me as a kid then, Chuck Norris just seemed like somebody who had always been famous. You never thought about what was the beginning of Chuck Norris's fame. Where did he come from? It was just like, Chuck Norris is a guy, especially if you're like a 9-10-year-old boy in America in the late 80s. Obviously you were obsessed with karate. Obviously, you know, action movies held a big hold on your imagination. And Chuck Norris was one of the guys for that. And I had Chuck Norris branded toys before I ever had any idea who Chuck Norris was. I in the column I just wrote, I relayed a memory I still have of going to see the film The Hitman, that's starring Chuck Norris. Not one of his better known films. I even as a kid, even at being like 11 years old, I remember going to see it and being like, this is not a great movie, but it is a Chuck Norris movie, and that's good enough. And I remember going to see it just entirely based on, you'd walk in the movie theater lobby and they'd have one of those big cardboard cutouts advertising
Yes.
a different movie. That was all. That was all I ever saw was like a cardboard cutout of Chuck Norris. He's holding a sawed-off shotgun and he's wearing like a long black coat. And it just says the Hitman. And I was like, I don't care if Chuck Norris is the Hitman. I don't care if Chuck Norris is chasing the Hitman. All I know is I need to see this movie. And my dad took me. I don't remember it being a great movie. I remember at one point he's beefing with some guy who's like a neighborhood bully who's like a big scary dude, and they're arguing with each other with a screen door between them. And Chuck Norris just punches right through the screen door and knocks the dude out. And I was just like, well, that's obviously awesome. That kind of stuff. That it was just like Chuck Norris was an avatar of outsized masculinity, and that made him perfect to be like one of the first memes. He became like one of the first internet memes in that like early 2000s era of the internet, back when the way you shared memes with your friends was forwarded emails. Sounds insane to people now how much of our internet communication was just emails, but it was like you'd get an email from one of your friends, you'd see it, he had forwarded it to you from somebody else. Maybe it'd be like three different forwards on the thing. And then it was just a list of those Chuck Norris facts, like you mentioned, where it's just like there's no chin underneath Chuck Norris's beard. It's just another fist. You know,
That's
Chuck
great.
Norris doesn't sleep. He just waits. All that kind of stuff. And it was like you didn't need it worked for that era of the internet because you didn't need a picture of him. You didn't need to be doing anything fancy like that. Image manipulation was kind of beyond most of our abilities at the time. All you needed was the text and a shared understanding that Chuck Norris is a kind of unquantifiable badass. And that worked. That was the entire joke, and people loved it. And it was just like it showed you how memes would come to spread over the internet. And Chuck Norris is, and for a lot of people, that's probably kind of like all they vaguely know is like maybe they saw him in Walker, Texas Ranger at their grandparents' house. Maybe they remember knowing about the Chuck Norris jokes, facts kind of thing. But to like a whole generation of people, Chuck Norris was the guy. He was the martial arts action movie guy. As a kid, I absolutely, for a long time, thought nunchucks were somehow named after Chuck Norris. It's in the name. It made sense to me as a kid. Chuck Norris
Yeah.
is a martial arts badass. Nunchucks, obviously one of the most badass weapons ever created by mankind. There had to be a connection. It was completely logical to me.
Yeah. I mean, I used to. That's a fantastic things and perfectly put there. I remember Friday nights were Walker Texas Ranger nights in my house when I was a kid, and my parents would come back with the shopping, so they'd have like popcorn and drinks and everything like that. Me and my brother would just sit there, thought he was the most badass guy in the world. My dad would be like, "Do you like this guy? I'm going to show you Delta Force. I'm going to show you the fight scene with Bruce Lee. Was it Enter the Dragon? I'm not too sure." And he'd be like, this guy taught Elvis Presley how to do karate? And I'd be like, what? Like, he's just such a wild, cartoonish kind of figure and a very placid guy for all of that, too. Every time I
Yeah.
saw him being interviewed, he was like very deadpan, very kind of straight guy, like, wasn't as exuberant as all these, the mythology around him, let's say.
Right. I remember I when I was in grad school actually, and I was like teaching, entry level English, like English 101 and stuff, the way they use grad students as cheap labor in the
Right.
American university system. You don't know. But they I had an office I shared with like three other people, and I just went into the office the first day, and there was just like a stack of books that was just had been like left around the building just because I don't know, people drop off books. I think the English department, these people read. And one of my office mates is just like, yeah, I guess we're getting rid of those. If you want anything in there, take it, but they're all crap. And I looked in there and there was a book by Chuck Norris, hardcover book by Chuck Norris. And I'm like, well, obviously I'm keeping this. And I would just read through it whenever I was sitting around in the office and had nothing else to do. And I still remember parts where it was very much like he would talk about just like having like a calm Zen approach to life and also like a very like stoic and kind of ascetic approach to life. I remember specifically him saying that he never eats until he's full. He always pushes away from the table, stops eating while he still feels a little bit hungry because he feels like it is bad physically and spiritually for you to eat until like you actually feel full. And I remember reading it and being like, he's probably right. That does seem like a badass Chuck Norris thing to do. I'm never going to live that way, but I respect, you know. And I also remember at a time where I was training at this like kind of old school martial arts dojo, like really like everything about it's old school. The guy who ran it, Jim Harrison, who owned and operated it, he died a few years ago, and he was just an old school badass dude and just had the scars to prove it. And he would have on the wall, he had multiple pictures of him with Chuck Norris, like they were actually friends. And especially like in the 60s and 70s, like martial arts scene, he was very proud of that. But he also saw me looking at the pictures once, and I remember him asking me, he's like, "You know who that is, right?" And I was just like, "Hell yeah, it's Chuck Norris. Who else could that be? That is obviously Chuck Norris." And he ran a lot of like kids classes and stuff, and he was like, they don't know. They don't know who Chuck Norris." And it's like, how could you, if they don't know, how could you tell them? How could you put it all in a way that they would understand?
Well, that is something that you've attempted to do. It should be up on uncrowned.com very soon. A tribute to Chuck Norris from the great big time Ben Fowlkes. I'd love to talk about Chuck Norris all day, but we've got things to get through. You got your list earlier, Ben. All right. You know there's topics that we need to discuss, okay?
See, it's not knowing the topics that's my problem. It's knowing and remembering the order. Because I remember the topics. They're all in my head somewhere. But I enter the flow state, Petesy,
Yeah,
and then
you do. It's not free jazz here, okay? It is, you're in Oasis, play the fucking chorus, play the verse, play the chorus again, okay? We don't need a 15-minute solo. Please do though. People love the solos, Ben.
it is so perfect that Oasis is your reference point for that.
Yeah, it is. Come on. Also, I got so many messages about your advice to Imavov, even though that's not the first time you've done it on this show, or I know you've talked about it on co-main event before, the Raven angle.
Yeah.
People are like, I cannot believe how much that would put this guy over. And I was like, he's been on this for a while, man. This is not something that he just conjured up right there on the spot. He's been thinking about this.
He'd be a superstar if he had adopted the Raven thing. He'd already be a superstar. I will admit, from everything I've learned via the internet, having a well-trained Raven as a pet and constant companion is probably a little easier said than done.
Yeah.
I think that they are a larger and frankly a little more dangerous and unruly a pet than a lot of us assume. But the concept is it. The outline of the concept is there, Nasruddin. It doesn't have to be a Raven exactly. Like, work with it, man. That's all I'm saying.
It's a good idea. And who knows, maybe he's in training with the Raven at the moment, and that's why, we haven't seen it yet, but he's going to reveal it soon once he has this bad boy tamed.
You're gonna want to work with that Raven in private before you bring it out there with you to an arena and have it bite some kid's finger off and you get sued during your walkout. So that's a good idea.
It is a good idea. Do you know what else is a good idea? MVP's Netflix card, because it's getting a lot of people talking. And I know that was a very rough segue. I apologize to the crackheads. Beautiful. But Daniel Cormier weighed in earlier this week. He thinks right now, this might strike you as crazy. He thinks that the people who think that the Netflix card is better than the White House card are absolutely insane. Do we have the video? Please, New York Rick, our step-in producer for today.
I think what they've done with this Carano Rousey card is made a real place for people to fight outside of the UFC. I mean, honestly, competition is a good thing. It always is and always has been, and it always will be. And I love seeing guys have the ability to go out there and make some money. So, yeah, congratulations. That was good. I'm excited. I'm actually excited. Hey, but for people saying compare it to the White House card, no chance. Guys, come on. The White House card is the best card of the year for sure. And it's better than that. Let's just be completely honest.
Before we get into this, Ben, I think we should have another view on this situation. Another UFC champion, another UFC double champion, Henry Cejudo. He had his things to say about this, believe it or not.
Mike Perry taking on Nate Diaz. Listen, Henry, you can say whatever you want, but this is starting to look like a UFC pay-per-view card.
This is a great part. I'll be quite frank with you, bro. Call me crazy what I'm about to say. I think this is just as good as the fucking white card, the UFC white card.
Do I call you crazy? No, I don't call you crazy. No, I don't call you crazy.
Francis Ngannou's in it. Nate Diaz is in it. Ronda Rousey is in it.
I want to see from the start to finish the run of show, how we run this event, how we keep this going. And that's right there is where you're going to see if these guys have arrived or not. Because they've got the backing in Netflix. They've got the audience in Netflix. They've got the viewers in Netflix. All you have to do now is run a successful event and show that you can do this time and over again. And hey, I think enters the chat a new player into the MMA world space.
Indeed, it is a new player in the MMA space. And of course, we got the Nate Diaz v. Mike Perry announcement earlier this week. You spoke about that. You wrote about this, should I say, on uncrown.com, Ben. It does add a lot to this event, right? From before we had it to when Nate and Perry has been added. It's a significant addition to this card, right?
It is, especially in name value and the sort of anticipation that you managed to build for the card. Because here's what I'll say in response to the two clips we just saw. For one thing, Daniel Cormier saying you're crazy if you think it's better than the White House card. In Daniel Cormier's position, he would say that if it were true and also if it were not. So let's be clear about that. But he's right that in terms of like the actual fighting you're going to see, the quality and competitiveness of the fights you're going to see, the level of mixed martial arts that will be on display, there's no question. There's no question that the UFC's White House card is better. I will point out, by the way, you've heard all these people talking about it. You know what phrase you have not heard from anybody in those clips was UFC Freedom 250. Ain't nobody calling it that, bro. Stop trying to make UFC Freedom 250 happen. You know how you know that that's going nowhere is that earlier this week, the UFC sent out a press release in response to, there was a Washington Post story where the head of the DC Athletic Commission was basically like, they have not talked to me about this event at all. They're using the fact that it's on federal property as a workaround from the Athletic Commission. And he seemed mostly worried about the precedent that would send if somebody else was just like, why can't we have a boxing match at Malcolm X Park? We don't need any commission oversight. It's federal property. And the UFC has allied with the ABC serving like in an oversight role to kind of calm everybody's concerns about that. And they set out a press release. In the entire press release, which was from the UFC, the words UFC Freedom 250 never appear. They are also calling it the UFC White House card. That's what everybody's going to call it. Stop trying to give it this name that sounds like a motor oil. It's not working. But clearly that card is going to have the better fighting on display. What the Netflix MVP card has is excitement and novelty factor. And those are big things. I think that when Daniel Cormier says the UFC White House card is clearly the biggest card of the year, I go, it's not that tough a competition right now because we have not had any big cards this year. We haven't really had a whole lot big planned. We've been looking at the UFC schedule being like, where's the beef? Where is it, man? Where are all the title fights? What are you doing? We assumed you were saving it up for the UFC White House card. You got one real title fight, one interim title fight on that, and then a bunch of other fights. And by a bunch, I mean exactly 4 other fights on the card, all of whom we kind of look at and go, what? Why these matchups? Nobody was asking for these matchups. You got guys on there that found out they were on it when they saw it on TV. It does not feel like you treated the making of it as a truly special thing. So, yeah, it's going to be better fighting, but MVP is going to give you like a show, and the fact that we don't know exactly what to expect out of this show, but we do know some of these names, and these names hold a real value for us. That's the appeal. It's not that we think Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano is going to be a good and competitive fight in 2026. I'm going to tell you right now, it is not. That is not going to happen. Nate Diaz and Mike Perry, that'll be interesting. But you remember what it was like last time we saw Nate Diaz in MMA? It wasn't great. Like he beat Tony Ferguson. Things really worked out in his favor and exiting the UFC that way. And it was very smart of him to get free of his UFC contract. You look at how it's paid off for him now. But as far as like what these people can actually do in the cage at this point, it's not going to be on a level with Ilia Topuria or Alex Pereira. That's just a fact. But it doesn't. What this is showing us is that fight fans specifically, but also like the general sports crowd, we are starving for entertainment. We will sacrifice quality if you give us entertainment, because we are feeling like the UFC is kind of a content mill that has great fighters, great martial artists, But we watch the shows and they'll kind of feel like this is this week's show. It's not something big and special. Now, the White House card, just the setting will do some of that work for you, but we are hungry for something that feels big, loud, and dumb, that kind of entertainment that we can all gather around. And that is what MVP is selling you on Netflix.
Absolutely. And look, I agree with what you said. The White House card is better in terms of the card itself. But the ripple effect this could have on the industry is what we all care about, right? Like you're right, the big loud event. We want to see what this looks like. Netflix, obviously, with the subscription they have globally, makes it a massive deal before you even put a fight together. But it's look, ever since this Paramount thing has started, it's not just the usual suspects saying like this has been a bit lackluster. It is a lot of people kind of saying this hasn't taken off the way people expected. The big fights that we wanted have not happened. You look at Netflix coming along and potentially having an event, never mind if it's better or not, that should be viewed by more people than the White House event. Like that is a very significant thing. That is something that Paramount will not want to happen, but it probably will based on the subscription numbers. For them to come into this market and offer big money, you'd expect them to be offering big money because Ngannou's there, because Rousey's there. They have all cited the fact that UFC have not offered them what they want previously. Nate Diaz was apparently at the negotiation table with the UFC. He now signs for MVP. This is all huge in terms of stimulating the UFC into doing something more interesting. If they actually have a rival, which they have not had, I believe Ariel believes it was the Strikeforce heavyweight tournament in 2011, the last time he felt like they had a real direct competitor, or at least something that was bubbling in the industry that made fans kind of think, well, what are we going to watch this weekend? That is what's interesting about this. The fact that this could stimulate a whole new energy in this industry. Obviously, we just see this as a one-off event for the time being. But as we saw with previous MVP Netflix shows, they get their foot in the door, they have some success, they will be back again. Do you agree with that, Ben? Like, is that one of the most interesting things for you in terms of the industry impact this card could have?
They will be back again, but not the same way we think of a potential MMA competitor being back again. The thing that we have learned and that Netflix has come right out and told us is they're trying to do big one-off tentpole events. They are not trying to create a fight promotion brand that builds from one show to the next. Yes. They're opportunistic about it. When there's something big available, they will do it. But they also, as I said before, they're not trying to hit singles. They are taking big swings every single time out. They want this to be a big, huge thing that people gather around, even if it's once every, 4 to 6 months. They want something like that rather than, hey, we have our own MMA brand. It'll be in your lives with 1 or 2 shows a month, and you'll get to know these are our guys and we have them under long-term contracts. I don't think they're interested in doing that at all. I don't think they should be interested in doing that. I think if you're Netflix, it makes sense to do the kind of events where like, hey, it's going to get some people in the door. It might be, you're not going to make your money back on like what you're paying for this event, but you don't make your money back on a lot of these movies either. It gets people to subscribe, to stay subscribed, to think of you as an important place where important broadcast television events happen, especially live TV events. Like doing live TV and being able to sell ads on live TV is something that sports is at this point pretty uniquely able to do, and almost nothing else is able to do it that way. So I think it's important in those regards, but I don't think that they're going to want to set themselves up as we're in the MMA business now, we're trying to compete with the UFC. I think that they're probably just going to sign who they can get right now, and then somebody will come to them months from now being like, all right, let's do another one. Here's who's available for that. And they'll kind of evaluate it on its merits. I don't think that when Kamaru Usman and Henry Cejudo were talking about like a new player, a new competitor in the space, I don't know if it's exactly that. I think that these kind of shows, to the extent that it offers any sort of competition to the UFC, you see the excitement of the fan base. And I think ego-wise, the UFC will want to be like, wait a minute,
Yes.
We're the big dog in this yard. They should be excited about our stuff. What can we put together that will take over the headlines from them? And I think that's good. That's good for everybody. That's good for the fans. That's good for the fighters. It's good for the UFC. The UFC needs a kick in the ass every now and then. It's all alone up there at the top, and it's easy to get a little lazy and complacent with that. It needs somebody nipping at the heels to get you to be the best possible version of yourself. And I think it's good for the fighters that you look at guys like Francis Ngannou, like Nate Diaz, who fought out their contracts, went off to free agency. It has worked out well for those people. That should make the UFC a little more urgent about maintaining some of this talent that it has. It has so few stars. If somebody like Ilya Topuria started talking about how he wants to fight out his contract, you better get real worried and you better back up the Brinks truck to make sure that he does not leave you. Because now that those people are seeing that there are other opportunities for people, if they can make a name in the UFC and then get out, they can really cash in. You don't want that if you're the UFC.
I agree with you completely. It's not going to affect this conveyor belt of events that we see every week, born from Contender Series into your entry level contract in the UFC. These people are populating a lot of cards. We're talking about for a number of weeks on the Ariel Helwani show, just in terms of how little we know about the people that enter the UFC at this stage. You know, like they're just like, okay, I guess this guy won a fight in Contender Series, and now everybody really high on him. It's not going to affect that. But as you said, I think if this is more than one event, and look, I think at best we can probably expect like three if they're going three a year. And again, it will be these top shelf names. That's where it's going to affect the UFC. Like champions coming up with 2 fights left in their deal, saying, "I wonder if they're going to be doing more of these Netflix cards. Like maybe I should have that conversation. Maybe I should let it play out and see if they have something interesting for me." And really, that's where the criticism is coming from even the UFC fan base at the moment. It's like, why aren't you making these really exciting fighters fight each other? Why aren't you getting these really big names to fight each other? You know, Diaz himself, he was part. I saw him completely as a larger part of McGregor's return as well, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But I wanted to ask you, Ben, if you've noticed this, because Ariel brought this up on Monday's show about the tribalism. Um, People are so affronted by this talk of a competitor that they completely disregard this Netflix thing. Like this is bullshit. This is way better. Not even looking at it. Won't even say the words Netflix because I'm such a UFC guy. Like, are you noticing a bit of that? I've certainly seen a bit since this announcement came out.
Yeah, you've seen it in a way that you used to see it way more often, where people would be on message boards calling each other Zuffa zombies. If you thought that the UFC was better than Strikeforce or these other organizations had nothing to offer, like that used to be a big part of the conversation, and it has just completely disappeared as the UFC has no competitor now. And yeah, you do see at least this conversation is happening now in a way that it hadn't before. And honestly, I think that some of the moves the UFC has made, some of the changes to the UFC's approach have opened the door for something like this. I know Ariel's talked about it a lot, that you've seen these big matchups that are right there. They're there to be made. They make sense. The fighters are open to them. You can make these big fights. And over again, in the last 5 or so years, the UFC has just not gotten those across the finish line. You can think of like so many disappointing fights that never came together. Francis Ngannou, John Jones, you weren't able to do anything there. John Jones, Tom Aspinall, you came close. You weren't able to get that one done. We were looking at Islam Makhachev and Ilya Topuria. We weren't able to get that. You could have done this Ronda Rousey, Gina Carano thing. That's the thing. Everybody on that side of the things is saying, like, hey, we talked to the UFC about this last year or the year before, couldn't get it done. And it's because the UFC has clearly now transitioned to this mode where they're like, look, we are making a boatload of money. We would like to make an aircraft carrier of money, and anything that gets in the way of that is a problem. We want the most cost-effective fights because we realize profit margin is the whole game. We don't need to make huge fights because we're getting paid just to put the shows on. Paramount's paying us $1 billion a year just to put the shows on. We don't need to sell pay-per-views anymore. The tickets sell even as we keep jacking up the prices. The events sell out in some places before anybody knows who's on the card. The brand has succeeded in becoming the star, so we don't need to pay extra to make any special fights. And I think you're getting to a point of fan fatigue where they're going like, give us something big, something that feels absolutely unmissable, instead of stuff that feels like this is this week's content. And that's what's opened the door for somebody like MVP to come along and be like, we're not giving you really a single relevant fight for MMA in 2026 here. None of these fights are like things where you're like, we need this one. This is a question that needs to be answered for where we are right now in this current moment of MMA. But every single one of them has a story, some kind of narrative. It's fun. Like, think about Nate Diaz and Mike Perry. Think about what that fight is actually promising you. It's like if you're in a bar and somebody comes up to you and they're like, hey, you know that weird badass dude who with the 1,000-yard stare always wears the Doc Martens and the wallet chain, and you just get the sense that you don't want to fuck with him because he's seen some shit. Yeah, he's out there in the parking lot right now. That crazy dude with the face tattoo says he wants to fight him. There's no way you don't get up off your stool and walk out there in the parking lot and see how that goes down. And especially when you're offering these things up on Netflix, one of the main streaming services that people just sort of have, it does feel as a viewer, the hoops I have to jump through to watch something on Netflix feel like the TV entertainment version of walking out to the parking lot. It's not hard. It's the easiest thing I could do.
It's such a good point.
Obviously, I'm going to go out there and see it. Even if the fight itself is disappointing, I'll come back inside, finish my Miller Lite, and not feel like I'm really out anything. And like that appeal works. That's going to work on tens of millions of people.
Absolutely. Again, very well put. You summed this up very well. This kind of impact that the Diaz booking had on the much touted Conor McGregor return. I was speaking on last week's show. I was speaking to people around McGregor, and they were very confident this was getting over the line, all in a good place. Haven't heard anything to the contrary of that this time, like, in the last week. But suddenly Nate is off the table, and he would have been a top priority, like, for a lot of people, including people from our generation of the fights. Like, this was something that we wanted to see. I saw a lot of people online saying nobody gives a shit. We want to see him against one of these, an up and like a relevant welterweight. And I understand
No,
that
you don't
too,
want that. You don't want that.
I
That'll
don't
be sad.
Yeah, it would be very sad. But I thought it was interesting that you did this winners and losers on the Netflix announcement, the MVP announcement, and McGregor was both a winner and a loser. So please, if you can, Ben, explain to me your take on this.
Yeah, I think he's a loser in the sense of losing the option to fight Nate Diaz. That would have been the perfect fight for him right now. If they could have got Nate Diaz on board for that, and obviously there are going to be some obstacles getting him to sign another UFC contract. He seemed very glad to leave. But that fight would have been winnable for Conor McGregor. It would have had a great story that you don't even have to tell. You can just let it tell itself. Conor McGregor was the way Nate Diaz became a star. He wins one fight. Before that, people don't realize it now if they are relatively newer fans to the sport. Nate Diaz for years was just Nick Diaz's younger brother.
Yes.
That's who he thought he was. And he was an okay fighter. He won some, he lost some. He'd surprise you sometimes. He'd go out there, he had the Diaz swagger, but he was in no way a star in the UFC. He wins one fight, has a memorable call out of Conor McGregor, and then gets the opportunity when Rafael Dos Anjos gets hurt, and he steps in there on short notice and shocks the world, beats Conor. Like one of those standout moments that you'll always remember as a fight fan, because you're watching it and you're going, oh, holy shit. Something unexpected is happening here. You can feel that momentum shift. That's something you get in fight sports that I think is great that you don't get in any other way. And if you've ever trained any sort of martial arts, you've experienced this yourself, and it can be a great feeling on one side and a terrifying feeling on the other side, where you're like, I'm in control, this is going great, and something happens, and then you feel it swing, and you go, oh no, here he comes.
Die.
Yeah, here he comes, and like, the fact that I'm tired or I'm hurt or something is not a deterrent to him at all. I am now food for the lion in the jungle. Like I'm the wounded wild beast. He's coming after me, and oh shit, there's nothing I can do about it. Like it was one of those big moments, and it was so shocking and memorable. And then they had the second fight where you could see it was one of the few times toward the later stages of Conor McGregor's career where you could see he had to change and evolve. And you saw that he did. You saw he made improvements to his game and refined his style a little bit to not let the same thing happen to him in the second fight against Nate Diaz. It was impressive. And so the third one now, when they're both at different stages of their lives and careers, would have made a lot of sense. It would have been a big fight that you could do. And most importantly for Conor McGregor, it would have been a fight that was conceivably winnable, and there are not that many of those for him among current UFC welterweights. So that would have been perfect. to now have that taken off the table by this, that hurts, leaves you much fewer options if you're Conor McGregor. The way he's a winner in it though is that now, because of this, the fact that there's even a debate about MVP MMA and the White House card and all this stuff, the UFC should be extra motivated. Do something big this summer. International Fight Week, whatever. Like, you need something big. You need a star. You need an event where we go, hell yeah, the UFC is still the king of this sport. No one can question that. And Conor McGregor would be the guy you could get that would help you do that. And especially you're throwing out Ilia Topuria and Alex Pereira both on this White House card. That's it. That's all you have for stars that are kind of currently in the rotation. You need something big. It's a good opportunity for Conor McGregor to negotiate a good deal for himself.
Yeah, I mean, you just talking about that first Diaz McGregor fight. Um, you know, back when people in Ireland used to ask me about, great big moments, McGregor moments that I saw live, they'd obviously be thinking Mendes, Aldo, Alvarez, but that moment in that arena that night, the MGM Grand, when Diaz choked McGregor, and it was when McGregor was like, he's gone gangbusters, like he had Gordon Ramsay there waving a tricolor, insane. Like all of these celebrities come out to see Conor McGregor. Diaz comes in, lesser known as you said, chokes him, and there's usually this the wall of sound just explodes, and it feels like you're beside a jet engine, just like a bah! When a big moment like that happens. When when Diaz choked out McGregor, I think the whole audience are primed for a big left hand end in the night, so they're used to this kind of finish of a fight. It nearly took like 10 seconds of just quiet. Like Diaz is up walking around, and it's nearly like it's not a roar, it's this hiss of people just going, "What the fuck is that? What is after happening here?" It's just one of the most bizarre moments I've ever seen live, and I'm sold even more on it now that you just brought that up. You mentioned Ilia Topuria and Pereira. They also have another guy on the card, which would be in the old winnable call, you might say, and that is Michael Chandler. Like, I mean, those are the two guys. Diaz, Chandler are the two guys that have been thrown around for years in terms of a potential McGregor opponents. What the fuck do you do now? Like, if like we're coming from this the same way, Ben. We know that McGregor is going to want to fight, even though he apparently has said yes to Pratchett. I don't like that fight in terms of McGregor seeing it as winnable. Apparently he does. But who else is out there that kind of has that Diaz Chandler? This is interesting through the prism of McGregor and the old era. I don't really see a lot of guys that can fulfill that need or want, and I don't imagine Chandler's going to have a good time with Hoofy at the White House.
Yeah, Michael Chandler at this point feels like damaged goods, and I
Yeah.
don't think that Conor McGregor is going to want to fight him because there's not enough upside if you win, and if you lose, it's kind of disastrous after what people have seen. Looking at the welterweight top 10 and the lightweight top 10, like if you were going to convince some lightweight, like, hey, let's just have one of these nobody cuts weight kind of fights, you show up for it. I don't know if there's anybody in I'm looking at the top 15, in fact. So you're looking at 30 fighters, not counting the champions. I don't know if there's a single person in there that I would pick Conor McGregor over. I don't think that there is. I could see maybe if you did something like Conor McGregor and Paddy Pimblett, something where you're like, hey, let's take a guy where he has a big enough name and he's also not quite a killer.
Yeah.
It's plausible. Like, maybe you could do something with that. I know Jorge Masvidal has spoken up saying he'd take a fight.
Not
Like,
bad.
that's the other kind of option, is to go get somebody where, hey, we remember him the same way we remember Conor McGregor, and it's not because of anything recent that happened, but they do have some sort of name, some sort of following. They could bring something and help you sell that fight a little bit, help you hype it up. That's kind of what you need. Because yeah, I mean, if you end up here with Carlos Prates, if I'm McGregor, I'm not taking that. It just does nothing for you. He's probably going to beat the brakes off of you. You don't want to fight those guys at this stage of your career. There's just no percentage in it. Why come back if that's all you're going to do? So you got to either get creative or talk somebody into doing something that they shouldn't do.
I saw Uncrown put out a graphic yesterday, Ben, and it was like, who will McGregor fight? These are the four people they have in the graphic, and just to what we're talking about here, I would not pick this man to beat any of these dudes. Charles Oliveira, Paddy Pimblett, Max Holloway, and Ian Gary for some reason. Um,
I
But
could see that. I mean, Ian Gary, like he's built a name for himself, and you look at him and you go, he's not super dangerous. He doesn't feel like he's going to take your head off or anything. Paddy Pimblett also honestly seems like not a terrible option.
it's probably the best option there.
Max Holloway, there's a history there, that you could play on, and there's something
Yeah.
to that kind of narrative where it's like we met once when we were but children. And like now we're long in the tooth, grizzled old vets. Let's see how it shapes up now. I think Max Holloway absolutely beats him. I think people underestimate what you lose when you are not in these gyms living that life. Like it's not just a matter of getting back in shape. Like that's one thing, especially if you've been known to maybe like a party or two. Getting back in
No
shape can be
aspersions
its
being
own
cast here.
challenge.
No aspersions being cast here on McGregor, whether he likes parties or not. Nobody knows that information about him.
It's pure speculation on my part. If you like a drink and a good time in the wee morning hours, you're gonna have to undergo a little bit of a lifestyle change just to get in shape. And people think it's just that, but it's not. Especially because it's like MMA is a sport that is still evolving relatively quickly. And so
Oh,
if
yeah.
you haven't been in the gyms, I think the great example of that is when he fought Dustin Poirier and was surprised by the calf kicks. By the time he was doing that, calf kicks were a known thing. It was a known issue you had to deal with. Everybody was doing the calf kicks at that point. And the fact that he seemed to not have an answer for it, he seemed surprised at how much it had affected him, tells you he was not living that life. He was not in those gyms watching those developments as they come. To have to drop into it and catch up is going to be very, very difficult. And I don't think that you're going to be able to do it against a lot of these guys where this is all they've been doing, man. This is a thing that you are picking back up, whereas they have been only about this life for years now. Those guys are going to be killers, man. You don't want to go in there with those guys.
Yeah, I remember saying this to you before. Oh, I was talking to some retired pros before, and this is like a couple of years ago when they were talking about McGregor coming back, and they were like, people don't understand that when you've been away for so long, you have to do a camp to get ready to go into camp.
You got to
Like-
get in shape to get in shape is the way I've heard guys say.
And
it
this
before.
isn't like just running 5K or whatever. This is like your body is conditioned to take impact. Like people don't understand the toll grappling has on your fucking body. Like you're in pain all the fucking time. That's pretty much until you build a level of tolerance after a year or so, where it's like this is how I feel all the time. Actually, my neck is sore, everything is sore, parts of my face are sore that I don't even fucking understand how they got sore. This is just the way it is. So yeah, there's all of that shit, but it's also like, do you feel like we've lost the trilogy fight with Diaz? Like Chuck did a great piece earlier this week. Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor's long delayed rubber match bounced like a bad check. And in there, he kind of ponders, like, have we lost this trilogy that's been always kind of out there in the ether, or will it remain in the ether? As I've said a few weeks ago, like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 2032 and they're fighting on Misfits. You know what I mean? Like, I do
Yeah.
feel it could always exist like that.
It could exist somewhere in the distant future, but not in the near future, which is what the UFC would have been hoping
Yes.
for. They would have been hoping for Conor McGregor in a international fight week kind of fight sometime this summer, sell out a big arena in Las Vegas. Like that's what they would have been hoping for from it. And you're not going to get that now. Everything we know about Nate Diaz suggests he likes to show up, fight, take his money, go away for a while. He's very content to take his money and go home, and will only come back maybe a year, maybe two, maybe three, if you got something good for him. And especially, I think that there's a good chance that in this Mike Perry fight, he will take a beating and he will not be in shape to turn right around and fight again in July or something. So I also think that he's going to make good enough money outside the UFC. What would you have to pay Nate Diaz
Exactly.
to get him to come back and throw back on the shackles of the UFC, which he did not like by the time he was done with it? And would you offer him a one fight deal just to come back? Because that's probably what he'd want. He would not want to come back and sign like a 3 or 4 fight deal with you at this point in his life and career. And he would have just found out he could get paid really, really well outside the UFC. I don't see the UFC being willing to pony up the money to make that kind of a fight. I see it way more likely that Conor McGregor sees what people are making outside the UFC and goes, how do I get out of here and enter that free agency market where I would be a big get for somebody?
the more this drags on, the more I feel like it could be like, and we always knew this was going to be happening if there was a negotiation with McGregor in this Paramount era, the post pay-per-view era where that man made his millions. It was always there was the possibility for it to be a flashpoint in this pay debate because, as we know, McGregor sometimes just gets online and spits some bars about whatever it is that's happening. Like, do you get that feeling too? The longer this is not announced, the longer we don't hear anything from either side, this could be a big chapter in the old fighter pay debate. Or has that stipulated for you? I remember you saying just a few weeks back, like, sometimes I feel like the media actually care more than the fighters do about this pay issue.
They care. I know that they care, but they don't want to speak up as much as the media do. And I know a lot of the fans just tell you they don't care. They just want to see the fights. I do think that the longer we go without hearing something starts to get concerning on the Conor McGregor front, specifically because of what you said, that it's not going to be like, hey, let me just jump back into a camp for 8 weeks and I'm ready to fight. Like he's going to need to have a good runway to lead up to this fight. So you're going to need to know for sure that that fight is happening. I don't see you getting him off the yacht and out of the nightclubs for a maybe a fight will happen at this point in his career. But it does seem like he is the best person to make this a flashpoint of the paid debate. Right now, that seems to have re-entered the consciousness. You even got Joe Rogan being like, the pay is bad.
Shit, yeah.
You know, like that. That seems Joe Rogan seems to have conveniently reversed course on a few things recently, where he seems to realize like, oh, maybe we got ourselves into some bad spots, and maybe I don't want to take the blame for those, and so I want to turn around. I mean, I'm sure it's a sincere thing of him looking around and being like, what the hell? And the paid debate, he's friends with enough fighters, he sees what they go through. That's, I think, always the thing I've said when fans are like, we don't care, or we don't want to see this become another sport where it's all just pampered millionaires. And I think the reason us in the media focus on it so much is because we know these people. We see what they go through. We see what this sport does to people. We see how much it takes out of people, and we want them to be fairly compensated for that and to not be broke and broken down when they're 50. And
Which is
he
the most
sees
common.
that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the most
He's
common thing.
Joe Rogan, I'm sure, sees that too. And so that's a part of it. But especially the Conor McGregor part is interesting because the UFC made this big change where they said, we're not doing pay-per-view anymore. We're going over here and we're doing it in a way we are sacrificing pay-per-view to get a huge increase, essentially a doubling of our guaranteed money. And to the people who have pay-per-view stipulations in your contract, we offer nothing. Well, now the UFC will say, hey, don't worry. Like, especially when you hear people, like a promoter, when you hear people who are keeping all the money say stuff like, don't worry, it's going to be fine. Worry. Worry. Don't take, trust me, from the people who have all the money. That's just dumb. Like, if you're working a job, you suddenly have to do a lot of stuff that wasn't in your job duties. You're working longer hours. It's much harder. And you go, hey, this is a different job now than what we agreed to for this money. And if your boss says, don't worry, I'll take care of you. Worry. Don't accept that. And the pay-per-view is a good example of that because they went through this already with sponsorships. Remember where there were guys, they were getting $50,000 to wear a baseball cap down to
Brendan
the cage.
Schaub was making 100,000 plus, and he brought the receipts when they told him, "No, you aren't, mate." He went, "No, I fucking am actually."
And you would hear all the time from fighters and managers that the UFC understood the way sponsorships were underwriting UFC contracts. We don't have to pay these people as much as they might be worth because we can say to them in the contract negotiations, hey, we will put you only on main cards in big spots, and that will equal big sponsorship money for you, and you'll get paid. Don't worry about it. It'll all work out in the end. And that worked. And then all at once, the UFC said those in-fight sponsorships are gone. We found a way to route all that money into our pockets, and we're taking away a revenue stream from you and not really offering you anything to make you whole, not really offering you like anything to make up what you just lost in compensation. And they were betting that the fighters would grumble about it, but ultimately lay there and take it, and they did. And I think that was a lesson the UFC learned where they went, like now with this pay-per-view thing, they went, all right, hey, look, the pay-per-view market was dwindling anyway, also through business decisions of our own. But now we say to those people, hey, yeah, that's just going away. And we'll make the bonuses more. We might offer you a little bit of a bump on your next contract, but we don't need to make it up to you. And Conor McGregor is like the one guy left where you do need to make it up to him because he remembers getting paid big time. You know, if somebody like if Carlos Prates becomes a champ, he never experienced big pay-per-view money. He doesn't know what he's missing out on. Conor McGregor knows. He knows that was a big part of what he made, and now you're making it instead of him, and he's going to go, we got to figure something out here. And if you don't, then you're just not going to get him.
Yeah. No, it's fair. You were mentioning the growing number of voices that we've heard speaking out about this. His second slot on the Craic today, Mr. Henry Cejudo had a thing or two to say about this, Ben.
There's a 51.49 pay in basketball, football, MLB, and these guys are making it. If these dudes truly knew what they are making and what the UFC could potentially pay them, they think a little bit different. And the other thing that I will say is managers, you know, could managers work together to formulate something to where they're able to see eye to eye with the UFC, where this doesn't happen, where guys are not, you know, working at Uber Eats. Like, you know, Pantoja, he was a former champ. When he was fighting in the UFC, he was working Uber Eats. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's not just him. There's a bunch of them. Right. You know what I'm saying? So right. I feel like some of that stuff should change tomorrow. And I think you know that, bro. I think everybody's afraid and scared and doing their own thing. But it's like whenever these fighters stop becoming pussies is when and these managers can actually get together, is when these guys could actually start to actually formulate something to where, all right, man, you guys made a lot of money now. Like let's distribute it a little bit better. Can we? Or is it the same model?
Kamaru Usman's face.
Yeah. Get me. I don't want to be in this clip.
Yeah.
Just get me off this fucking thing, please.
Pete, you remind me who repped Kamaru Usman and Henry Cejudo?
Ali Abdelaziz, I believe it was, the biggest power broker in the industry, some people say.
Broker is a great term right there, because right now what we've seen in this sport is there are relatively few actual managers, people operating the way a manager is supposed to operate in these things. What you have a lot more of is brokers, where basically they're sort of in business with the UFC more than they are in business for the fighter. What they bring to the UFC is like, hey, I will funnel talent to you guys, and I know that my business is essentially a volume business, and the most important aspect of my business is staying on good terms with the UFC. That's the most important part to the brokers in that space. It's not representing each individual client's interest to the best of your possible ability. That there's no way that is a thing that is what gets those guys out of the bed in the morning. What they want to do is make sure that they are staying on very friendly terms with the UFC. And they're also they're using their roster as a whole when they're negotiating. They're not just looking at it and being like, if I'm negotiating for Henry Cejudo now, I'm looking out for the absolute best deal for Henry Cejudo. No, you're thinking about your entire book. You're thinking about all the fighters you represent. You're not going to risk alienating the UFC. Ali Abdelaziz himself had said that. When he said, hey, Henry Cejudo is coming back, I promise you he's not just going to come back, try to win the belt one fight, and then go away. I wouldn't do it if that's what he wanted to do, because that would be bad for the UFC. He said that. And it's like, you should be working for Henry Cejudo when you're working for Henry Cejudo. That's a big problem. Like when having these specific guys talk about, like, I don't understand why these managers don't do something, why these fighters don't stand up. And it's like, you guys have been right there as part of the problem. You guys have been on the inside of those kinds of things. And that you don't have a collection of managers who are willing to do that right now, because they want to stay on good terms there. And you have all these fighters who are telling themselves, like, well, I don't want to stick my head up now and have it be chopped off because it's sitting above the crowd. Maybe if I work my way up, become champion, become a top contender, then I can say something. But then, hey, once you're in that spot, you don't want to jeopardize it. Those are the prime earning years. So you're going to keep quiet then too. And that's why you see this arc where it's like guys in that spot, like the Henry Cejudo, Kamaru Usman spot now, are the guys kind of like speaking up. And by then it's too late. By then you're just another, ex-fighter or nearly ex-fighter grumbling about the money he thought he should have got but didn't.
And you can kind of see how foreign it is for a fighter a manager just to be speaking up about like we want to earn the most amount of money when Andy Aspinall. He's in an interview being like, oh, there's a lot of money in boxing, and people are like, what the fuck? How dare you want your son to get more money? What the fuck, man? Like it was like, yeah, like that, like it's not only his son, but he's like, that makes perfect sense what this guy's saying. Everyone's like, I can't believe he'd say something like that. Meanwhile, they're in the boxing world talking about money left, right, and center all the time. The same guys who are like, well, I can't believe this dude just said that. It's insane. And the management issue is huge. It is absolutely huge in MMA. And the more you learn about it, the more worrying it is. Honestly, I'm
Yeah.
talking to fighters this week about their management situations, and it's fucking crazy. Honestly, it's insane. They need them because to break into the inner orbit of the UFC, you need to be one of these verified dudes. As far they're made men. There's not many of them. There's about 5 or 6 of them. They're made dudes. You got to get in with them to get in there. It's a crazy, crazy situation, honestly.
Yeah, and every once in a while we have seen the UFC have to deal with real managers who have come over from
Holly
other
Holm.
sports or anything. Yeah, and they hate it. The
Fedor.
UFC hates it when they have to deal with a manager who's actually representing his client's best interest right there. They've been very vocal about how much they hate it, and it tells you what they're used to. They're used to a much more friendly broker relationship with these managers.
We'll just call them brokers from now on, will we? On this show, they're just brokers all the time. That's what we're going to do from now on. There is some fights this weekend, Ben. I don't know if you know about this. Actually, fights happening right now, sir. PFL Madrid is going down now. And again, I really love this fight card. Fabian and Costello, it's a huge fight for Europe. Obviously, a big maiden voyage into Madrid. They've had huge turnouts for the open workouts, for the weigh-ins, all this kind of stuff. And I got a message today off Darren Russell on the PFL team. He's spitting out names like Kylian Mbappe, Jude Bellingham, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Brahim Diaz, Arda Güler, all these guys who are huge Real Madrid soccer superstars, the kings of that town, showing up to this event tonight. It's obviously not the first time we've seen Mbappe at an MMA event, nor a PFL event. He went out to support Cedric Doumbé when he was playing for your guys, PSG, over there in Paris, Ben. So,
Yeah.
a big deal. I actually wanted to get over there and see it, but that is actually going down right now. And an interesting thing from PFL this week, from what I've heard, part of this will be broadcast on Talksport. Talksport is a huge sports radio show in the UK. You probably would have familiarized yourself with it when Eddie Hearn was doing the Conor Ben stuff back in the day, giving the public its pound of flesh as Simon Jordan eviscerated him for hours on end. They are on board with this. They have been doing collaborative posts with PFL all week. True Geordie, a big influencer in the UK, is also doing a watch along for this event. I mean, we're talking about PFL making big moves to make this a meaningful year because time is running out on the PFL machine. This feels like a significant thing for them to do. I think it will generate some interest. I would love to see Talksport kind of feature Fabian on the show or something like that to underline the relationship they have with PFL. But it's very significant. And I was speaking to Fabian Edwards this week, Ben. Interestingly, I saw a post on Fight Week and it said like Team Renegade burned down. And I was over in Team Renegade a lot like 2 years ago, and kind of made sense to me because they are next door to a tire factory. Basically, it's like something out of The Simpsons. Like it's like this.
Oh man, I was really wondering what was going to come next when you said it kind of made sense to me. I was like, did they have a bunch of space heaters going? Were you at the gym and you were like, that's way too many things to plug into that outlet, bro? Like next to a tire factory was something I did not see coming. Yeah, I thought it was gonna be like they have guys sleeping in the back and they're smoking cigarettes in bed. You know?
They probably do, but apparently, right. So there's this big warehouse on a main road in Birmingham, and there's all these obviously like a big unit for the gym, and right beside it is this tire shop or factory, whatever you want to call it. The building behind them went on fire. And it went straight into that tire factory. And fucking Fabian said they couldn't put it out. Like there was so many tires burning.
Oh my
They were
god,
just
that must have smelled awful.
They're just watching it consume Team Renegade and be like, nah, yeah, we're not getting in there. Fucking those tires are not going out, guys. So
So it wasn't even the tire shop that was the source of the fire. It was
Not
a
even the
different
tire
building, came through the tire shop, then got the gym. I mean, man, that is That is rough. I will say one of the strangest things I ever saw once was in one of my favorite places on earth, Ocean Beach, California. There's a great ice cream shop there that I love, and they were closed for a long time, and they just had a sign up like "closed due to fire," and I was like, "You're an ice cream shop. How does an ice cream shop catch on fire? And a fire so bad that you got to be closed for months and months? What are you doing back there?"
It feels like the hook for a novel. I mean, I want to know how the ice cream shop went up, but I was kind of saying to him, "Wow, this like must have fucked up your camp, like if your gym went up fire." And he's like, "No, no, this happened like months ago." And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "When did it happen?" He's like, "Oh, it was during Leon's camp for practice." And I was like, "Oh,
What?
well, that might explain a few things actually as well." But
Yeah, what do you
it's
do?
gonna, huh?
What do you do in that situation? You just we start working out in the garage or what?
They went to a local gym who are friends with Leon and Fabian, I believe, or some Ash from the guy who owns Renegade, and they just let them. They said, "We're gonna be a whole area, put a cage in there." But I imagine like it's not the type of thing that happens instantly, right? Like
Yeah.
it's gonna be a bit of a pain in the ass for a while, but crazy situation, and one of the great European gyms there. Certainly when Leon was in his pomp, and it looks like Fabian's trying to take that mantle now. Of course, they have PFL Pittsburgh next week with Brian Battle v Johnny Eblin. Johnny Eblin has been saying, "I was fucked up for that Costello Van Steenis fight. I got my ass handed to me in the last 10 seconds of it, but I'll be back, motherfuckers." I just wonder. He definitely hopes it's Costello Van Steenis that wins this fight because he's fought Fabian twice already. One of which was an incredibly close fight in Dublin where Fabian cut open Johnny Eblin's face. And I was like, wow, they're about to stop this fight. Then Eblin just came out and flatlined him. It was one of the craziest fucking fights. But that's it's gonna be an interesting couple of weeks for that middleweight division there in the PFL. I must say, you've also got on the co-main event, Adam Boric is against AJ McKee, so a very good card. A lot of Spanish interest. I'm going to tune into it as soon as we're finished here because it's going to be good to see.
Why is it the PFL? It seems like they just pop up all over the globe. They got a real "Where is Carmen San Diego" vibe going these days, and I get it. Where if you're a competitor promotion, you're looking and you're being like, where are the opportunities that the UFC is not already dominating? Like, where are the niches? And you've seen different promotions do it. Like, why people love to do the tournament type structure that the PFL used to do and that Bellator used to do because they were like, what's something the UFC doesn't do? Tournaments. Let's do tournaments. And so now PFL seems like they're trying to do it geographically because I feel like for me, the PFL will drop kind of off my radar, and then I'll hear like day of, like PFL Malta is today, and I'm like, oh shit, like all right, like PFL Bruges, and it's just like had no idea what was happening, but okay.
The place is electric.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like they're smart about how to get like local interest and get like fighters that make sense for that region and everything, and it does seem to work for them. And I'm just like, that seems like how they've identified like there's an opportunity there.
Absolutely. And before we move on to the UFC London, that is just one thing I was saying to people in the PFL this week. If this talk sport thing is fucking happening and they get on board in terms of like they're featuring people on the show, a UK card is a must. Now that you're out of this tournament situation, if you have Fabian Edwards come out of this event tonight champion, you have Dakota, if she's back fit, ready to fight, Paul Hughes, Lewis McGrillen, like you could do a really fucking good card there in London. And if you had that kind of interest getting beamed into so many homes as talk sport is, and so many people just listen to it on building sites while they're working, I think it would be fucking huge. But alas, it is one of two big events happening in Europe this weekend, the other being UFC London. Lerone Murphy not really getting the old promotional, here is this guy from where you live, please get behind him, this is a massive deal for him. Obvious things I feel sometimes, like just, prop him up there a bit. This is your new guy. Fucking get behind him. He is fighting the most devastating wrestler we could find. Enjoy that for 25 minutes. Do you feel that the featherweight challenger to Alexander Volkanovski's throne, and I know the boys in the back had a long conversation about this yesterday, but Ben Fowlkes, do you believe that a new contender could be born out of this fight, or is this exactly what the UFC don't want while John Silva is there salivating and growling beside the cage?
Well, first of all, I want to point out you're going out of order.
Oh, shit.
You look at the outline. This was supposed to come before saying it happens. I've
been cut by my own sword. Okay,
I'm on some Bruce Lee be like water shit out here, so I can flow with it no problem. I just want you to know that I noticed. I think that
sorry,
you could make a very good case that this weekend in London, you will see the two best featherweights in the world fight each other. I think it ought to be a no-brainer that the winner, either one of these guys could have been the contender for in the last featherweight title fight. It would have made sense. Just pick either one of them. Close your eyes, pick out a hat. And the UFC has decided, like, no, we're going to do Diego Lopez again, have these guys fight each other. And the only reason that you could justify doing that is if you're saying, we're not convinced yet, have them fight each other. Whoever comes out of that clearly is the top contender. You got to have that guy go and fight for the title next. The thing that is difficult is that if we're being honest and we're playing the odds here, you're probably going to see a tactical decision victory from somebody. You know, probably be a close fight, probably be a competitive fight, but you're probably not going to see wild and crazy, we're both planting our feet and throwing kind of fight. And so the UFC does seem like they're prioritizing those guys recently where, hey, they deliver some excitement, their fighting style, personality, all that kind of stuff is more what we want. Neither one of these guys seem to really fit that mold, but they do seem like they might be the best in the world. I think that's the conflict that we're in right now. That's the challenge that both these guys are facing here. And that's probably a big reason why we haven't seen more enthusiasm from anybody about this fight. Because if you're just looking at, hey, we want to see the best of the world fight the best in the world, you got it. You got it on Saturday in London. And let's see what you can do with it. Let's see how many people are interested in it. I think that's the conversation that we're having right now.
And it's not looking good, right? Like for guys like us who are all like beating the meritocracy drum, like the interest in this event is not great. Like even for a London event, as I said earlier, it doesn't feel to me as big as the previous ones they've had. There's a lot of opportunities.
The undercard is kind of dog poop. Let's be honest. We know some names on it, but the undercard is not great.
It's poorly matched. Like it feels like a lot of opportunities. Like Luke Riley, he's being put in the Paddy Pimblett spot. Like this is a guy who, this is the new guy from Liverpool. But what people aren't mentioning is like, and Luke Riley's great. I've been watching the guy for years on Cage Warriors. I think he's fantastic. People don't understand is like Paddy Pimblett was a bona fide, like he was a star before he came to the UFC. Like everybody knew who this fucking guy was already. And it's just Luke Riley is not that to Cage Warriors the same way as Paddy Pimblett was. He was like one of a kind. And he's in here. I think he's going to have a big fight. And I think he has a big future, honestly, Luke Riley. It's nothing against Luke Riley. He's fighting Michael Aswell. Then you have Paige and Sam Patterson. Just a weird matchmaking.
What's up with that one? What are we thinking there? What's the logic?
And I like Sam Patterson. It's just like Michael Page is a prestige fighter right now. Like he is. Like he is a name. You can put him in fun fights. He's doing all kinds of shit. He's going with the middleweight. He's fighting Ian Gary. He's doing all kinds of shit. I just don't know if that makes sense to put him beside another British guy, Sam Patterson, who is very tall. They are both very tall welterweights. Other than that, I don't really see the sense in it. But there are some bangers. Like there is some low-key bangers. You've got Mason Jones, double-weight champion for Cage Warriors against Axel Sola, double-weight champion for Aries. So France v UK in terms of feeder leagues. People are like, I was there for all Mason Jones. He was the first double champion in Cage Warriors since Conor McGregor. He's a great lad from Wales. Sola, I wasn't consuming all of the Aries events, but people are fucking really high on this guy, really high. And he's gone into this an underdog. You've got another clash of European promotions with Nathaniel Wood, who was the face of Cage Warriors, particularly their London events for a very long time, against Lawson Keita, who we know missed weight for that fight with Pitbull. When he was meant to make his debut, the fight didn't happen. He's also a double champion with Octagon. Nathaniel Wood being slept on in a fucking major way by the bookies from a guy that we've never seen fight in the UFC. It's very interesting. I know GC's having a very big look at that one, as I'm sure a lot of people are. There are things on it. It's just, by the way, Chanel Dwyer, in the opening fight of the evening, is one of the best strikers I've ever seen in women's mixed martial arts. You got to check this girl out. She was with PFL for a while. She is fucking unbelievable. She's against Ravina Oliveira. I think she's going to piece her up. Shamrock there, another one from Next Gen. Louis Sutherland, of course. But it's very inside baseball, the reasons why I'm liking these fights, right? Like, yeah. I'm like, these guys are two champions from these obscure promotions that most people in America have never heard of. I just don't know what it is. Like, it's just doesn't feel as big as the other London events have, man.
That is a tried and tested way to go about putting together a card for local appeal to sell tickets. That is, that's what that approach feels like to me. Is like, who do these people know, and they can sell tickets to people they know. And that's how Strikeforce used to do it back in the day, and then Scott Coker brought that same strategy to Bellator, where it's like, hey, the main card is for TV, the undercard is going to have 15 damn fights on it, and it's going to be people, because if they can all sell 15 tickets to the people that they train with, their friends and family, then they'll help fill out this arena. That's kind of what that feels like. I have also heard this, though, a complaint from fans. You used to hear it a lot from the fans in Australia, where they'd be like, hey, we love when the UFC comes here. They sell out every single time before we even know who's on the card. And then we see the card, and it's a bunch of kind of local guys, because they're thinking Australians, they want to see Australians, right? They want to see Australians and New Zealanders, and those are the people they know and who they want to see. And they're like, hey, yeah, we appreciate the fighters from this era, but we are also MMA fans. Like, we want to see the big names too. We don't want to just see the ones from our region. We've seen them. We want to see you bring over, I can remember this, somebody saying this to me once, and this will date this reference, but he was like, we want to see Rodrigo, like Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira too, like we want those guys too. Like, we're big MMA fans, and we don't just want it to be a local appeal card that has a UFC brand on it. And I think that maybe that's one of the reasons that you're seeing it be a little dimmed in terms of like the enthusiasm beforehand here.
2014 UFC Dublin has a lot to answer for. Because it just worked so fucking well that night. They were just like, this is all we're doing until the end of time. So there it is. It's interesting fights. I guess for some hardcores, I do think this is a good fight for Evloev, and I hate to say that because I'm a massive Lerone Murphy fan, and I have heard that things have switched up for Lerone in terms of camp in the lead up to this. I mean, that sounds like the worst possible time to do something like that, if I'm going to be completely honest. Honestly, like, this is the toughest fight. This is the fucking hardest fight in the division. And I hear that he will have a different corner than usual tonight, which is troubling because he came so far with MTT, I felt like, and they were winning these fights against matchups that didn't really make sense for him. I don't think it's beyond Lerone, but I already thought he was in a kind of a rough spot. And then when you hear that, if it's true, I'm like, well, that's going to be a fucking rough night at the office for Lerone Murphy, unfortunately.
It could be.
It could be. March Madness. Are you a March Madness guy, Ben? I don't think you are. You hate basketball.
I hate basketball, but I'll fill out one of those tournament brackets every year. Filled one out this year. No, I'm just going on sheer vibes. That's all I'm doing. And I'm also working around like Gonzaga. I remember Gonzaga being good like 15 years ago. They're geographically one of the closest teams to me here. So sure, like they could make it to the Final Four. Why not?
Are they really close to you? I only know the names from basketball documentaries I've watched in the past, and I'm like,
they're in Spokane, which is about a 3-hour drive. So it's like the closest big city. So yeah.
Well, listen, enjoy it. Enjoy everything. Go over to Uncrown. We have loads of stuff on Chuck Norris. We have loads of stuff on UFC London. We have loads of stuff on PFL. We have loads of stuff on the MVP Netflix card. All kinds of shit, man. We're the best website in the goddamn game. So make sure you go over there, read all Ben's wonderful pieces that we cited today. A few up there for myself as well. Not as good as Ben's and Chuck's, I'm going to be honest with you. Start with those, and then if you're still interested in reading, continue on to my stuff. But we are all on there, all of the brilliant writers of Uncrowned. Make sure you check it out. Have a wonderful weekend. No, we are not finishing the show yet.
No, come on.
Because there might be super chats. Is there super chats, Rick? Do you have that? Are you capable of this? No, there's the music. No super chats this week because New York Rick doesn't know how to do it. We'll answer them next week or something. Okay? We love you. Have a great weekend.
I could do the guitar riff if we need.
Wow. No, he's not letting us do it. He wants to go. Rick's drinking. That's what I heard. Anyway, thanks very much. Love you. Have a great weekend.